Yeah, we'll jump in whenever.
I'm ready anytime.
We're, what,
Do we need to do community calendar, or you're just going to go to the show?
Well, if it hasn't played it on its own.
No. Well, if it did, it came and went.
I don't know why.
anyone doing very
Apparently
sad
it's-
news?
it's
This,
a media player or something.
No, it's just it's actually instrumental, like
right, so we're not following
It's-
any
it's
dead whales or
ambient.
anything in the mid-con.
right now it's just fucking ambient music. It's really like sleep-inducing.
Good, that's what
Whoa.
we want for a lead into our show. Alright.
Alright.
Cams.
Okay. Staying.
Oh wow, this is very sleepy.
Did you?
Hello and welcome to Cinema Smackdown here on CJLS 1690 AM. My name is Tess, and I'll be, in some regards, your host for this evening, but in the most accurate regard, I am not, because I have no idea what we're talking about.
You mean in the regards that it's not even close to evening yet?
Well, it's evening-ish. It's a gray skies.
Maybe in Australia?
It's evening for me, I got up early.
So you're better prepped than usual.
Exactly. I have no idea what's going on. Shane, why don't you fill us in?
Shane, why don't you break us into the subject here at Cinema Smackdown Quarterly, where we like to come around once a season to do an episode.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
It's been a few weeks.
Well, someone's been traveling, haven't you?
I have been traveling. That is correct.
People who aren't from here. So we were thinking, well, it was topical when we first came up with this subject a few weeks ago, and it's still topical now, and will continue to be topical for years to come, because every 5 minutes someone else gets kicked out of Hollywood. So we're going to talk about Hollywood Pariahs.
Yeah, well, just in case, I'm gonna jumpstart this with this weekend's Hollywood Pariah, someone who won't
Did
ever
I miss
work
one?
again as of about 3 days ago. There is an actress by the name of Vanessa Marquez. Did you hear this one?
No, I'm still recoiling from the Asio Argento scandals.
That's true. Well, this is not that kind of scandal. Vanessa Marquez was one of the character actresses on ER back in its heyday.
Which one was she?
I have no idea. But she was working with Clooney and everybody else back in that period, and saw a lot of career stalling post-ER, and this week was shot to death by police.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Well, what a way to put a
Well, that is a
monkey wrench in
career
your
ender,
career.
yes.
Shot to death by police when they were asked by her landlord to check on her because she had apparently, she was a lot of erratic behavior, and they thought she might be in distress. So the police went to her apartment, where she brandished a gun and aimed it at them, and they shot and killed her, only to learn that the gun was a BB gun. But apparently she was extremely agitated and acting.
That's like appropriate police response.
Well, they didn't know she wanted to shoot at paper targets. It's not surprising. You don't point a gun at the police ever. It's just not a great
I think we
idea.
should just do away with the police in general.
You're right. We should have let Vanessa Marquez patrol. I think that would have been a much better idea. So anyway, that's just
who
our
would
latest.
who would police all these other psychopaths that were currently trying to kick out of Hollywood?
I just wanted to jump on that one because it's so scarily fresh. I can't believe it happened so recently. But she did have
An interesting way to bring that up by saying she's not going to work in Hollywood again.
well, it's just ways. In fact, the reality is she did have another chunk of career-destroying period of her career, in that
You usually do before you pull a BB gun on cops.
she started to. She claimed at a certain point that George Clooney was personally barring her from getting work, to which George Clooney essentially responded, "Who?" No, you can look it up.
It sounds like she might have. I don't know. I don't want to overreach, but it sounds like she may have had some mental health issues.
Yeah, that apparently was the call anyway. Sorry if you're a family member. We don't mean to disparage her memory, but it's kind of outrageous that this just happened.
And we're callous.
All right, Shane. Let's hear some less recent pariah-ish behavior.
Yeah, we want to talk about people who are were and are barred from Hollywood for a variety of reasons, and this goes back quite a way. So we're now coming up on the 97th anniversary of the Fatty Arbuckle case.
Keeping it contemporary.
Keeping
for our
it contemporary,
listeners.
but no, we have to get to the genesis. This is the origin of the Hollywood Pariahs.
We need to bring it up and really, really explain it all so that in 3 years nobody will be caught unawares for the giant celebration.
Right, start buying your party hats now.
So why don't you inform us first of all who Fatty Arbuckle was?
Okay,
and
so-
what went down with
so-
he or she.
Back in that's true. Yes, Roscoe Arbuckle, also known as Fatty, not a name he cared for, but that's how he was billed because he was a rather large gentleman. He was one of the central comedy figures of the silent era. He is credited with having discovered Buster Keaton. He mentored Charlie Chaplin. He was well on a path of being one of the 4 great celebrated comics of that era, the third one being Harold Lloyd, and then there was going to be Fatty Arbuckle, except his career took a nosedive very suddenly during a Labor Day party in 1921. It was Prohibition era, and Hollywood being Hollywood, they said, hey, let's have a big 3-day-long booze up in a hotel.
Well, of course.
Of course. Over the course of that booze up, a young actress named Virginia Rapet was discovered not well. She was taken to hospital where she died 4 days later of a burst bladder.
Oh, jeez.
So people back in the day put their CSI Miami hats on and said, well, obviously the reason she died was because she had been raped by a fat man who had burst her bladder with his sheer bulk.
Reasonable.
Reasonable.
Conclusion.
Well, the accusation did not come from the alleged victim. She had actually been friends with Roscoe Arbuckle for years, and made no accusations of anything untoward or criminal in any way before she died in hospital. The person who made the accusation was a friend, and I use that in big air quotes, a friend of hers named Maud Delmont, who had known her for all of 3 days, and was known to police as a notorious blackmailer and extortionist. And it turns out,
So the Joseph Smith of Hollywood.
so as it was later speculated, and I'm sure quite accurately, she was just trying to shake down Fatty Arbuckle's lawyers for money. But this turned into one of the big trials of the century. In fact, 3 trials. The first one was a hung jury. By the second one, Team Arbuckle thought, okay, well, we have this so in the bag. It's so obvious that this is just a trumped-up charge. There's no evidence of anything. They kind of laid back and let the jury decide for themselves. But again, because the press and the media and the public in general were so wrapped up in this case, it was a hung jury again. By the third time it went to trial, the defense pulled out all the stops. They put Arbuckle himself on the stand, which was a bold move considering this was potentially a capital punishment case. And the verdict in that case was probably the greatest exoneration in certainly in celebrity trial history, where the jury felt compelled to write a letter of apology to Arbuckle that he had gone through this horror, because there was nothing to say that he'd done anything other than try to help a friend by seeking medical attention for her. So he was completely exonerated. It didn't matter at all. It still destroyed his career. By 1923, they were still burning old copies of his films that were on archive, so there's a lot of Fatty Arbuckle material that is now ashes. He was only able to get sporadic work under an assumed name. His old friend and partner Buster Keaton helped him get as much work as he could. Finally, by the 1930s, a full 10 years after this incident happened, he was allowed to make a few short comedies, which did well in the States, but couldn't even play in England because the Board of Censors there were still holding him accountable for the trial that he'd been acquitted of a decade earlier. Finally, Warner Brothers offered him a new feature film role. This was going to be his big comeback. He had a couple marriages fall apart during this dark period of his life, but he was, celebrating the first anniversary of his third marriage. He was also celebrating the contract they just signed for this great comeback role. He went out to dinner with friends to celebrate, was quoted as saying, "This is the best day of my life," and then promptly went home and died of a heart attack in his sleep at the age of 46.
Which we all know was actually caused by him being smothered by a
Yes.
came upon him in the night.
Yes.
And burst his bladder.
For those interested in the medical reasons for Virginia Rapé's death, she was actually suffering from a severe bladder infection that was exacerbated by drinking. Which,
as bladder infections generally are.
yeah, so, doing a big Prohibition-era booze-up was probably not the best for her. But her exploding bladder had nothing to do with a fat man on top of her.
Well, now I know what my first stop is if I ever find a time travel machine. Let me go back and make sure about all this.
Or at least save his films.
Yeah,
Stop burning those.
That's a good point. Yeah. I recall a quote I really liked from, I think it was Woody Allen. Woody Allen said, all films should be preserved, without exception, except Porky's.
but that's a cornerstone of the entire Canadian box office.
I'm well aware. I just thought it was a funny movie to choose of all the possible things to... But I don't know why I'm bringing up Woody Allen. I mean, he's hardly a pariah.
No.
It's still very much embraced by Hollywood.
No.
I mean, he has been.
No, Woody Allen essentially announced his retirement this week because
I'm sure he'll be back.
his
like
last
old.
movie, which was completed 6 months to a year ago, is essentially unreleasable in the current climate of how much he is hated, to the point where all or most of the actors who worked on the movie have renounced this most recent movie, have renounced him. They've all said they regret working on the movie, and they have all donated their salaries to charity. This in spite of a mountain of proof that Woody Allen has never done anything wrong. Go read some articles.
I've read many articles in my lifetime.
Go read some articles.
Well, more pressing to the point is the recent Ronan Farrow article about, or not Ronan, sorry, Moses Farrow.
Okay, let's move away from this topic, which we had
know.
said we were not going to talk about, and I specifically told you I did not want to talk about.
I thought you were a huge Ronan Farrow fan.
Let's move away from this.
We're questioning your journalistic integrity now.
I have.
No, I'm good with not getting deeply into that one. Do your own research, people. There's lots of it out there. You can make up your own mind. Right. Let's talk about fun pariahs. That's what you want to do. You want to jump back to the funny ones.
How many more murder victims do we have?
Victims.
Victims or murderers. Murderers. If you get kicked out of Hollywood for
I've got
committing a murder,
murderers. I don't think I have victims. I have spent my murder victim quota, I think. I mean, you could say that Gary Busey probably died in that original motorcycle crash. Gary Busey in the late '80s was driving a motorcycle without a helmet and had an incredibly vicious crash that left him, without question, severely brain damaged. And he resumed his career, and everybody knows this zany, bizarre character called Gary Busey now, who has basically continued to work despite saying nonsensical things, being erratic, and essentially acting like a person who should be put in an asylum.
Or acting like about 40% of Hollywood actors.
He's a little further out there, you know. He's so crazy that there's essentially a religion for him now. So
He's crazy, but without the endearing qualities of a Christopher Walken.
that's very true. He's nowhere near, except for the one exception for Gary Busey I find is still the movie Point Break. It just sort of works in that one. That's his shining achievement post motorcycle crash role.
Well, I wouldn't call him a pariah so much as a survivor who's succeeded as much as he succeeded despite the brain damage.
Yeah, he's definitely on a few of those celebrity weirdo shows too. Whatever
They're all celebrity weirdo shows.
Yeah, but the really deep, dark ones where it's him and Coolio and a few other people of that nature. At any rate, Gary Busey is more of a funny one since he's still wandering around working.
Kitchen Nightmares with Gary Busey and
He's
Coolio.
not been banned from Hollywood. In fact, he's been banned maybe from Hollywood, but
He's-
not from the area surrounding
He's
Hollywood.
just sort of
where
let's put it
they're
this
on
way,
TV.
he's certainly been banned from any kind of A-list production in the last 30 years.
We do have to take a brief break now for some advertisements and promotional material. So come on back or don't leave. One or the other. And we'll be back in a minute.
So once again, doing the show underwater. It's, if it's not broken air conditioner in a heat wave, it's torrential rainfall.
Yeah, humidity.
Yeah, sorry, we don't have any scandalous Me Too stuff. That was
Despite the fact that you
Complete
insisted
ac-
on bringing
complete
that up,
accident.
despite the fact that I told you I did not want to discuss any of
well,
those
we
things.
won't. I just don't want you to worry. There's no other people in this list.
So are we not doing the complete Woody Allen retrospective next week?
No, let's avoid it.
I was gonna say, when you said people who were murdered, I was gonna say Sharon Tate, and then I thought we could just go down a rabbit hole there, so I don't really want to.
Oh, you don't want to do the plans?
You can do that one. I mean, it's going to be very topical since it's the 50th anniversary now. And there are
next year, yeah.
multiple TV shows and movies about it coming out next year.
Yeah, well, the Tarantino one, of course.
Hilariously, the guy who's playing Manson in the Tarantino movie.
He's also playing Manson on, on Criminal Minds, or Mindhunters, yeah. We're not back yet?
We got
There we go.
30 seconds.
Wolfman Jack doing his thing. Do you have anybody to bring up, Tess?
No, I did no research and I have nothing to say.
No, you might have somebody that you're like, haha, you fool, why would you do this? I mean, a lot of the people I have here still work. They're just,
Yeah, I mean
or have worked.
if we're talking about murders, like there's the Sharon Tate thing, there's the Natalie Wood thing. Those are
The Natalie Wood one is really,
dark.
it's controversial, let's say. It's still a thing.
And we're back talking about
Who we should or should not talk about.
yes. So yeah, what do you guys got on the table there, Michael? You got something? For me?
I've got some favorites. Some of these people still work, but certainly in a lesser capacity than they used to. A really good example would be one of my favorite. He was for a while there an up-and-coming director. He was really getting to an interesting place, and that is a gentleman by the name of Roger Avary. Roger Avary was Quentin Tarantino's co-writer on the film Pulp Fiction. He won an Academy Award for that. He has written or co-written or ghost-written a number of very big Hollywood movies. But what I like best about him was the couple of films he managed to direct in his very short directing career. He did Killing Zoe, which I thought was a really effective little thriller starring Eric Stoltz and a quite a large French cast. It's a pretty great film. And a couple of years later, he did, what was it called? Was it The Rules of Attraction? Is that it?
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah, the Bret Easton Ellis adaptation, which is so much better than that book deserved, and is just a wonderful series of vignettes and strange things. And it's filled with, I mean, it sounds pretentious, but it's filled with auteur filmmaking. There's so many things in this movie that are so intentionally shot. It's gorgeous.
I mostly remember the poster. The teddy bear Kama Sutra.
I don't even remember that, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, oh yeah. Kama Sutra.
Kama Sutra.
Let's
Karma.
drop that R.
Not karma.
Karma Sutra.
Oh
It's
yeah.
a whole different type of sutra.
That's what goes around comes around sex. At any rate, Roger Avary was enjoying his life. He was a very public blogger. He would write blogs on a daily basis about what he was up to. Even if he was just eating and writing something, he would make notes and comments. Very open. So one afternoon, I don't know what year it was probably in the early 2000s, Roger Avary had some friends over, I believe. They all ate and drank, and then he drove them to the airport. He was hammered, or at least a little bit high, and he drove them into an oncoming car. I believe, without re-researching it, that people in his car were killed, and people in the other side were also killed. He went on trial, was found guilty for being essentially inebriated during this incident, was sentenced to a pretty light Hollywood-style prison sentence, which was a couple of years. I think they gave him 3 to 5 years, considering what he could have gotten. It was pretty light, and as I understand it, something along these lines, you can check the details if you want to, but something along these lines happened. He served about a year of his sentence and was released on parole, which was very early. He then went home, resumed his career, and immediately began blogging again. And one of the posts he made while blogging was mocking the judiciary system and how he had essentially slipped through the cracks and gotten away with it.
That's a good way to continue slipping through the cracks, all right.
Well, the law read this post rescinded his parole, and he had to go back and finish out the entirety of his sentence without any parole. So, after that point, Roger shut the hell up. He never made another public post.
If only the state police didn't care so much what he had for lunch. They wouldn't have been checking up on him.
He, apparently only one person was killed that was a passenger in his
Okay.
car. Yeah.
All right.
that's
Like I said,
That's
I
enough.
haven't
That's enough
reread.
people.
I haven't reread that story in a few years. I just know that essentially that was the details. Was he
So-
killed somebody and then he was an idiot about it.
Yeah.
So in that case-
apparently he posted on Twitter about
Oh, nice.
the
The
incompetence
bigger-
of the judiciary system that would release him.
Well, they corrected that. Never again will the Twitter loophole be used.
So that means the motor vehicle homicide champion is still another one of your favorites, Eric Red.
Yeah, that's right. Tell us what you remember
Oh,
about the Eric Red
No,
story.
you're the Eric Red expert. I think I'm going to have to hand
All
off
right.
on you because you remember the details way more than I do.
Well, Eric Red was a renowned screenwriter. He also delved into directing, but he's mostly well known for writing 2 films. He's written about a dozen. I think they're all excellent, but 2 in particular are nihilistic masterpieces. One of them is called The Hitcher, a film with Rutger Hauer and C. Thomas Howell, which if you haven't seen it, run out and see this movie. It is a masterpiece. And also a nihilistic Texas quasi-vampire movie called Near Dark, directed by Catherine Bigelow early in her career, and the first of her really accomplished pieces of work. So Eric Red had a great pedigree for making movies about people who do terrible things in a shower of violence.
Often with motor vehicles.
Motor vehicles, a lot of motor vehicle violence, a lot of gunfire, a lot of blood. So, out of the blue, one day, well into his career, Eric Red apparently was driving down the street, and for reasons, and to this day, still unknown, because from what we understand, he was not drunk, not high, or anything else, drove his car or truck, I forget which, through the front of a bar, running over several people and killing them. He then exited his vehicle inside the bar, stepped out of his car, looked around at the carnage, proceeded to pick up a broken bottle from a table and try to slash his own throat. He was unsuccessful. He was saved. He did survive this experience. And he has since gone on to write and direct more horror films, which is extraordinary. He isn't really working in Hollywood anymore, but he has moved on to writing novels, which I think he self-distributes. I'm in awe of him, considering how close his incident is to something that would have happened in one of his movies. It almost feels like it was intentional.
It was research.
He has written a few movies where people do terrible things to other people with cars, so it is sort of...
Clearly a fixation.
Yeah, it's extra awful. But I don't know, I still love those movies. What does that say about me?
You're forgiving.
I guess, I don't know.
You have a kind heart.
It's a good thing you don't have a driver's license.
Yes? Question mark?
Speaking of which, is Matthew Broderick still driving?
Oh, good lord, that's a good question. There's something that didn't end someone's career.
No, he did get through that.
Matthew Broderick, while on vacation with the woman who played his sister in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
So there was some hot incest.
That's right.
Element to this.
They were dating for a little while post Ferris Bueller, which is kind of off-putting if you're a fan of the movie.
A little bit.
But they went for, I don't remember where it is, I believe it was somewhere in Europe. They went for a little trip, they rented a car, and proceeded to run someone over in the middle of the night together. And weren't really in any trouble for it, as I understand it. Went right back to Broadway and...
He didn't run someone over, he ran headfirst into somebody else's car and killed 2 people.
Ooh, so he's actually more of a murderer than Roger Avery, and yet he's allowed to
But
walk
not
free.
up to the standards of Eric Red.
Very true.
But Jennifer Grey did become a whole Hollywood pariah of her own by
That's
going
correct.
into the witness protection program, apparently, getting a nose job that made her unrecognizable, and subsequently scuttling her career.
Yep.
As her distinctive nose just went poof, gone.
Amazingly, it really did end her career. She was unrecognizable even to her closest friends and family after having essentially a bump taken out of her nose. That was the gist of, it was a little more than
But
that.
she set the stage for Renée Zellweger to later similarly destroy her career.
By having a full face-off face replacement.
Yeah, she was auditioning for an all-female remake of John Woo's Face Off. It was going to be her and Uma Thurman. And
Uma Thurman still looks like Uma Thurman, despite a few
in some
very,
shots, yeah.
I've watched her on things recently. She's still 100% herself. It's just a few strange tabloid images that really make her look odd. Jennifer Grey famously, well, not so famously, but slightly famously, portrayed herself on a television show called It's Like You Know. It's Like You Know, that's what it was called. It was on, I believe, in the 90s.
It's not like you knows?
No. Where she played Jennifer Grey, actress who had a nose job and is now no longer recognizable as Jennifer Grey. That was her entire character. She's on a dozen episodes of this show, and I think it gets brought up every single show. That even her own father cameos on the show and doesn't recognize her. Just as a...
Well, there's write what you know, and then there's act what you know.
Act what you know. Oh, dear God. At any rate, I still like Jennifer Grey. I wish she would, get more work. She still has charm and personality. And for that matter, so does Matthew Broderick. He's still...
Can she have surgery to bring her nose back?
That was actually my thought, was I wonder if she could literally just get the exact original
Or just
reconstruction.
go around wearing a
I don't think
prosthetic
it
all the
works
time.
that way.
You go to a makeup artist and just get this bulbous thing put on the end of your nose and just walk around like that all the time.
And people would be like, "Hey, Dirty Dancing!"
Oh yeah, I remember you! Take it off and poof, she's invisible.
Yeah, the Hollywood Witness Relocation Program. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I believe Meg Ryan is in that situation as well these days. She does not look like Meg Ryan anymore. So
True.
that's perhaps why she is no longer working.
Why she's not in anything anymore.
There's not 100 and then Meg Ryan was insane stories. Maybe a couple. They're mostly by her ex-husband, so I don't know if that counts.
What are we talking about here?
Hollywood Pariahs.
Hollywood Pariahs, yes.
Well, we can move on to the and then they were insane stories, because there's plenty of those.
Let's hear one of yours, Shane.
Well, my favorite's got to be Sean Young.
Oh, yeah.
Very promising early career. Blade Runner.
Well, I just saw her in Blade Runner 2049.
Right.
Not from, did I get the number right?
Her very CGI cameo in that one. Because she doesn't really look anything like that anymore.
Oh, that's true. But that's not where her career went wrong.
No, her career went wrong. The nutty behavior started... Back then we didn't have the internet to go over every single little story. But the one I remember in particular was when she decided she really, really wanted the Catwoman role for Batman Returns. And
well, she had a history, right? Do you recall her history? There was a reason she wanted, that she felt entitled to it. Okay, it stems back to the original Batman movie, the Michael Keaton film. She was cast in that movie as Vicky Vale. And a couple of weeks prior to filming beginning, she fell off a horse and broke her leg and had to be replaced by Kim Basinger. So she already had a relationship with Tim Burton. She felt comfortable in the Batman universe and wanted to get back into it. But
and ultimately proved herself to be as crazy as any of his villains.
yeah, she essentially stalked Tim Burton on the set of another movie.
In a Catwoman costume.
Yeah. She brought security people of her own and then ran around an entire studio searching for him with walkie-talkies. This is pre-cell phone days, asking her security people to, the moment they spotted Tim Burton, contact her so she could race up to him in a Catwoman costume of her own making, I understand.
And presumably meow at him until she got the job.
I have heard that Tim Burton hid behind a garbage can in order
Yeah,
to...
I heard there was a certain amount of hiding involved in this exchange. Yeah, she did not get the part, but, bonus credits for initiative, I guess. She was committed to trying to get that part. Strange audition process, but...
Well, Sean Young she was in an interesting movie in the late 80s called The Boost with James Woods, where apparently she had some sort of relationship with Woods, and the entire movie is about a young dynamic couple who start doing drugs more and more heavily to fuel their relationship and their lives, and it just drags them into a pit of despair and misery. And apparently they did a little bit of research on the subject in order to do the movie, and so both of them did apparently... The rumor is that James Woods got her pretty addicted to a few things, and that might have severely affected her going forward, what her mind was like, and how she behaved. And all of her erratic behavior comes after that movie. So, again, it's just a rumor, but one never knows. And if you go by anything James Woods has said, speaking of Hollywood pariahs
Yep,
lately,
I was going to say.
he's been completely blackballed from the industry by his insane ranting about different subjects. You know.
Well, plus, Hollywood these days, you are really not allowed to be a Republican.
That's true, but he's a pretty angry Republican.
Because, by the same measure, Gary Sinise is also on the outs. And he's a very nice man. He's a normal, charming guy, but he's a Republican. And we can't have that, can we?
He did like 87 seasons of CSI. I think he's alright.
Yeah, I'm sure he's fine. But I don't think Hollywood's knocking on his door much of late.
Yeah. I found the more interesting Hollywood oustings of late happened a couple of years ago on the set of Criminal Minds. We mentioned CSI, so there's a similarity there. If you haven't heard this one, Thomas Gibson essentially played the lead on that show. I mean, it's kind of an ensemble cast, but he's the leader of the group, and he was on something like 10 seasons of the show. Every episode, playing this character, really involved, very, very, just, he was a major piece of this show and where it came from, where it was going. And as the show progressed, he wanted to take a more active hand, and he directed a couple of episodes. So apparently, while he was directing an episode, he got into an argument with someone on the set, and when things escalated, he kicked that person. He kicked them. He was reprimanded, suspended, pushed off to the side. The episode was either scrapped or finished without him, I don't recall which. And they waited a couple of weeks, and they just outright fired him for his behavior. This company man who'd been part of the show for a decade was removed for this apparently one little anger incident. And in his own words, Gibson said something along the lines of, I'd been having arguments with this person that day, and then they approached me very quickly. Like this person, he felt like the person was running at him, and he raised his foot to say, hey, whoa, whoa. I'm not even sure he struck the person.
To be fair, I feel like I'd get fired from my job if I kicked someone, regardless of how long I've been working
Well,
there.
like I said, I think according to him, he didn't even really kick the person.
Well,
he just
okay,
raised a
according
foot
to
in
him.
defense.
No, I just raised my hand and they ran into it. I don't even know what happened.
So at any rate, yeah, he was ousted, and the man hasn't been seen or heard from since, essentially. Which, it's a messy one of those removals. Although Criminal Minds has had many, many strange departures over its seasons. Mandy Patinkin was
Well, he left voluntarily.
He left voluntarily suddenly.
Right.
He showed up for work one day and said, I am never
I can't
shooting
do
another
this
one of these shows.
Yeah, and apparently he was also like, people who watch this show are sickos. You people should be ashamed of yourselves.
Mhm.
I'm leaving.
That's essentially his parting statement.
Didn't he have a mea culpa years later about what a dick he'd been?
Well, yeah, but if you go back through Mandy Patinkin's history, he has essentially quit every show he's ever been on, with the exception of Homeland. And I've been watching Homeland.
I was going to say,
every
because I
season.
think his mea culpa came during Homeland, and it stank of, please don't fire me from this one.
Well, he dropped out of Chicago Hope mid-series. He dropped out of Dead Like Me mid-series, Criminal Minds. I think there's 2 or 3 others. It's just this recurring motif in his life that you would assume producers would be onto by now. I'm not sure this guy's going to hang
He was
around.
on for a while. On Criminal Minds for a while. And
I think he's there for 2 or 3 seasons,
yeah.
but he dropped out in a mid-season, essentially during an episode. He walked in one day and said, this isn't the show I thought it would be, I want out. And he abandoned the production so suddenly that he angered the cast. They felt very betrayed by him, apparently, to the point where his final scene, they shot a scene of him saying goodbye, which is him alone in a room at a desk writing a letter saying, I'm sorry, I have to leave, goodbye.
Yeah.
Without a single other cast member involved.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So no cake for you.
Speaking of crazy beliefs, I don't know if this is why this person doesn't work anymore, but I'm sure it doesn't help. And I love talking about this because it's great. Dan Aykroyd and his amazing
He believes
beliefs.
everything.
He believes literally
Yeah.
everything.
He believes
that you can think of.
everything.
He believes literally everything, from aliens to mediums to ghosts to
Is he into Bigfoot as well?
Yes.
Bigfoot. Yeah, Bigfoot.
You
9/11 conspiracy, I think, gets thrown in there. Basically, just any nonsense you can cram into a human brain.
Yeah, you name
He's
it.
into it.
Dan Aykroyd has founded a religion around it.
Yeah. And I think that probably everyone's seen this, but if you haven't seen it, go and watch his Larry King Live interview from, I think it's 2008.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Where he is just ranting about alien intelligence, and he's promoting his vodka, I think, on that interview. Or maybe that he promoted vodka afterwards.
Could
No, I
be.
think he's promoting vodka on that interview. His Crystal Skull vodka, which is delicious.
It certainly comes in a cool bottle.
Yes, and
Indiana Jones certainly thought so.
Yeah. And he's just ranting, and Larry King's just kind of sitting there with a really puzzled look on his face, wondering when this is going to end.
I don't know. Well, Larry King talked to his fair share of psychics and weirdos, so
True,
a
true.
celebrity one of those was probably a good break for him.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's, I think Dan Aykroyd's career was already on a downswing, but although, he's
I wouldn't
probably
call
been
it
spouting this stuff all around.
I wouldn't call Dan Aykroyd's career a downswing. I mean, he was a character actor who worked successfully for 30 or 40 years.
And then
But he also did writing. He also wrote.
Oh, he wrote Ghostbusters.
Yeah, no, and he spent the last 10 years trying to get Ghostbusters 3 made until we got the film that we got.
Well, that was entirely. It took 30 years, right, to make Ghostbusters 3.
But
Essentially,
he
in
had such a
29
great
years.
cameo in that film, Shane. It's just exactly what the fans wanted.
At any rate, the only reason that movie took 30 years instead of 5 is because Bill Murray kept saying, "Yeah, I'll do it, just not yet," and he said that for 30 years. And it took 25 years until he finally said, "Yeah, I'm not doing it. Like, I really don't want to do that again."
And yet somehow they managed to land Bill Murray for the video game years earlier.
Yeah. Well,
The video game's great, though.
probably one afternoon's work. Bill Murray was pretty famously reported during the launch of Ghostbusters 2 as saying that he had the best time ever hanging out with those people again, and the worst time ever making the movie. So he really didn't want to be there, and he was vocal about that just prior to release of a film, really saying like, "Ugh, this movie," which is not a great marketing plan. But yeah, Bill Murray's pretty notoriously cranky, and we all love him for it. So.
He could have been a Hollywood pariah, except, Wes Anderson found him and put him in everything.
He did resuscitate him. I mean, he brought him back from death in Zombieland. I mean, without anything.
Well, not him, but,
No, I mean, he brought him back. He dies in Zombieland. That's the end. He somehow resuscitated him.
Actual
after that
Bill
point.
Murray dies in Zombieland.
That's correct. He does. He has a good goodbye to that. Actually, should have been his last thing he ever did. It's kind of a good goodbye, everyone.
I'm happy that he continues to make Wes Anderson films.
One of the people, Hollywood Pariahs, who does continue to work, albeit at a much lower level, which I just find fascinating, is Katherine Heigl. Are you guys aware of her career?
Yeah.
So-
She's a bad one.
That's
Well-
a good example of shooting yourself in the foot repeatedly.
Right. So
And then just continuing to do that every time you open your foot.
she had two big breaks in Hollywood, two really big breaks. One was Grey's Anatomy, and one was the movie Knocked Up. So, for the movie Knocked Up, prior to the release of the film, she made statements about the film, which was she thought the film was sexist, painted the women in it as shrews, as humorless and uptight, and it painted the men as lovable, goofy, fun-loving guys. Way to promote your movie a week before it comes out. In regards to Grey's Anatomy, she outright refused to submit her own name for Emmy consideration during one of the seasons, and publicly stated that the material on the show did not deserve the award. Well, that's gonna make the bosses love you.
Yeah, well, not to mention the writer room. Because
Right.
nothing writers like to hear better is crap like that. Because
Yeah.
then they're really going to write you some good scenes.
At any rate, she has continued to work more as third banana, fifth banana on shows, and she recently landed a part on the TV show Suits, where she plays probably the most unpleasant character I've ever seen on television. So she's really betting 1,000 lately for her career comeback. So
She was in the excellent film.
one for the money.
I can't even remember the name now. It was so bad. Oh my god. Okay.
We're
hang on,
just
I
going
have
to
to look
stare
it
at you
up.
until you come up with it.
The movie I mentioned, One for the Money, was an attempt to give her a fun female detective bounty hunter crime franchise, which did not, as far as I'm concerned, didn't even quite make it through one film, let alone a series, which is kind of a shame.
Okay, I see the photo of her looking crimish in there. No, I was talking about the movie Jenny's Wedding, in which Katherine
Jenny's
Heigl
Wedding.
plays a lesbian woman who, with what's her name from Gilmore Girls?
Okay, Alexis Bledel.
Alexis Bledel. They are the
Very believable lesbians.
the least believable lesbians ever put to screen. They are so awkward and uncomfortable. They barely touch each other in the entire movie. I think there's maybe like one peck on the cheek between the two of them in the entire movie, which is about their wedding. Really the most boring, flat movie I may ever have seen, and it involves lesbians.
Let's hear another Pariah scandal Hollywood personality from you, Shane.
Okay, well, one of my favorites, because he's a Canadian, and it doesn't take much to get a Canadian kicked out of the industry.
Is that what happened to Alan Thicke?
I think that's another case of a slight case of death finishing off that career once and for all. No, surprisingly, it is Mike Myers.
Well, I don't actually know what this is.
Oh, you don't-
100% about.
you don't
I
know
know
this
about
one,
some
okay.
bad movies.
Yeah, well, exactly. Mike Myers, he was kind of a darling for a little while with his Wayne's World movies, and I was a particular fan of his first real jump into cinema with So We Married an Axe Murderer.
I too am quite a fan of that one.
And of course in the Austin Power films, which I'm not a particular fan of, but they did extremely well. And then his first career-ending misstep was The Love Guru, which was, again, I'm going to create another character and people are going to love it. Well, not this time. And that one tanked horribly. Now, one tanked film out of a pretty good run shouldn't have finished off a career, and yet it kind of finished off his. Why? Well, turns out behind the scenes, Mike Myers is a real asshole. Apparently, nobody actually likes him. He's a bit of a perfectionist dick to everybody.
Yeah, I think I heard he micromanaged that film. to death.
Perfectionist? Is that what we're going with for the Love Guru?
Yeah, well, it's my way or the highway perfectionist, put that way, yeah.
Well, when you walk onto a set and you essentially say, I can do your job better than you to every single crew member, and then you proceed to take their equipment away from them and do some of their jobs, that will get you a pretty bad reputation as, quote-unquote, a perfectionist. It just depends. You have to be able to...
Or as they like to say, difficult
Yeah.
to work with, or creative differences. That's
That's
another
it.
great
Yeah,
euphemism.
that's what I heard, is that he micromanaged a lot of stuff that didn't really need his hand.
Now, the thing is, you can get away with being a complete ass to everybody if you're making everybody
If
money.
you're making money, yeah.
Yeah. The second...
See Michael Bay.
Yeah.
Not lately.
But when your career takes a dive, it really helps to have been nice to people on the way up, so they can help you do a comeback. Well, no one's interested in helping him do a comeback, it seems.
But he's doing so great under full prosthetics on the Gong Show.
Well, I was going to say, as far as the full prosthetics go, he did have a small role in *Inglourious Bastards*. Tarantino did use him in that. Yeah, it's fine, but
it's
it's
one
not
of the,
headlining a whole comedy. It's
a real standout. Oh, so when you do a serious role, you do your same fake, goofy British accent that you do when you're making a comedy. Okay. I wouldn't call it the most authentic British accent I've ever heard.
No, he does much better Scottish.
But he is sort of mounting a minor comeback right now, so stay tuned for our follow-up episode next year.
Well, good luck doing that without Vern Troyer.
He had his own scandals, but the less said about that, the better.
Well, hey, if we want to talk about about celebrities who have had sex tapes and porn, how about that Tom Sizemore?
Oh, dear God. Yeah.
Tom Sizemore, who went from very A-list movies, including Saving Private Ryan. Help me out. Name some.
Point Break. It's
Well,
my go-to.
Going through go to.
Did everybody in that movie go crazy or die tragically?
You're also a fan of True Romance.
That's true.
That's not mine.
He's got a smaller part in that one, but he's in all of the early Catherine Bigelow movies, including Strange Days and Point Break and perhaps more. that aren't coming to mind. But yeah, he was buddy. He was the buddy in a lot of big movies.
Right.
And,
You know, and then there was the drugs and the alcohol, which are standard
and the
Hollywood
hookers.
fare. But what really sunk him was his well-publicized affair with Heidi Fleiss, the Hollywood madam, subject of many news stories and documentaries, and a book of claims that.
That got public.
Yeah,
Very public.
He was hanging out with the Hollywood madam, and then for some reason decided, I know, starring in porn might be a good idea. From Spielberg films to porn.
That's true.
Now, I have not seen the porn.
I have.
You have seen the porn.
I had to view a little bit of it.
I confess I had no desire to see Tom Sizemore naked, let alone getting laid.
He made this movie while awaiting trial for drugs and other incidences. He essentially is so high in this porno that all he does is talk about how high he is and how great it is to have sex with prostitutes. He then proceeds to have sex with multiple prostitutes, people who are identified in this film as people he hired for the day to come in and have sex with him, who signed waivers. And the most frightening thing of all...
I hope they were wearing hazmat suits.
The most frightening thing of all is not his gargantuan genitalia, which is upsettingly large. It is...
Where's this show going right now? What have I done with my life to be here right now?
But just to let me
Are you
finish...
calling that up on the computer as well right now?
Just to let me finish, the most frightening thing about Tom Sizemore is that he had the name Heidi tattooed directly above his penis on his belly in giant bold black letters. Heidi. I'm at a
In case
loss...
you need reading material while you're down there.
I am at a loss to know where anyone goes from there at that point.
Well, apparently the answer is nowhere, because his career has not exactly been stellar.
He still works.
He still works. He still works.
Around.
A slight comeback, but
he's in the same place as Eric Roberts. He's in a lot of little tiny $10 movies, and occasionally still gets a part in something.
I think Eric Roberts will sue you now for even mentioning him in the same sentence
Eric
as Tom
Roberts.
Sizemore.
Eric Roberts and Tom Sizemore have made many films together since the scandals, so I'm sure that they have no issue being linked together.
So is there a buddy porn film in the future?
Oh God, I hope not. I actually really admire Eric Roberts. I think he's a lovely human being. He's one of those guys that no matter how bizarre he gets, he's still nice to everybody.
Well, he has to be wonderful if he puts up with Tom Sizemore.
For a man who's made something like 400 movies, about 380 of which are terrible, Eric Roberts still does have 20 fantastic roles. So it's a little hard to just outright erase him.
Yeah, and Tom Sizemore almost has the same amount. And then there's the porn.
Yeah.
And the career. The end of the career.
So we do have to take one more small break, and then we can come back to talk some more about porn, murder, and aliens.
Oh dear.
How much time do we have left to...
Well, after the ads, we'll probably have like 8 minutes left.
No.
I mean, we can go over if you want. We started late, and no one ever cares. But whatever, we're good. Do you have a person or two?
I don't know. Well, we haven't mentioned Lindsay Lohan. She's.
I think that's kind of so famous. It's not really necessary.
Actually, Shia LaBeouf is worth mentioning, if only for his capture the flag story.
As you wish. There's a lot of these folks.
Do you know that story?
Capture the flag story?
Yeah.
No, I know the whole Shia LaBeouf meteoric decline.
just the flag part.
The flag part.
I don't know the flag.
Okay, oh, you should tell it then, just for Tess.
You could do Mel Gibson.
Yeah, I wrote him down, but it's okay.
Yeah.
He's another one who works so much now that you're like, geez.
And we're back. So we've got something on the slate.
We do.
Oh, yeah, well, we were just talking in the break how we have to mention Shia LaBeouf.
Of course. I mean,
promising young actor, increasingly weird, started to treat his career as some sort of bizarre performance art.
yes, indeed.
With his bag over his head saying, I am not famous anymore, and various
I appreciate it.
various
I don't like
fisticuffs.
him, but I appreciate it.
He took method acting to a whole new level in the film Fury, which features a bunch of guys stuffed into a tank together, where he decided, you know what, I'm not going to bathe during this shoot. Because, you know, my character wouldn't have had an opportunity to bathe.
That's one of two things he did. Are you not
What
aware
was
of
the other one?
thing?
Oh, is that the one where he had teeth removed?
That's correct.
Yeah.
In the tradition of Nicolas Cage, who for a war movie also had teeth removed.
You should always emulate Nicolas Cage in your acting career.
Absolutely.
Shia LaBeouf had one or more teeth removed for his performance. This is permanent. This is not the kind of thing that you can then just have easily fixed a couple days later with tape. He had a dentist pull some of his teeth out.
But
it's just
it's a
not the same
complicated procedure.
Exactly. So yeah, Shia LaBeouf had some teeth removed for that. Go on then.
But during his descent, the favorite story to come out of Shia LaBeouf was his capture the flag moment. Not a Trump supporter. He had his saying, "He will not divide us." So he had a flag created with the words "He will not divide us" printed on him. He originally had a camera set up in, I think it was Times Square or thereabouts, for people to comment. And of course, you set up a camera in a public place anywhere in New York, it's not going to go well. So once that got pulled, he just flew his little flag somewhere, had a camera pointed at it, and left it alone. This was his statement. Well, as it's often referred to, the weaponized autism of 4chan decided to figure out where this flag was. Now, keep in mind, it's just a flag on a pole with nothing but blank sky behind it. But occasionally things would fly by, like an airplane or a bird. And using things like wind currents and cloud observation and flight paths and species of birds and where they're indigenous, they figured out where this flag was and dispatched someone to go and seize it.
Wow.
So they got the flag, and this happened within
I'm honestly impressed.
This happened really fast too. It was like, it took about 48 hours. It was super, super fast, with so minimal information. It's like, oh my god, why aren't you guys working for the CIA? It's incredible. So Shia LaBeouf, not to be dissuaded from this plan, decided to move the flag to another secret location somewhere on the globe, and fly it again. This time he thought, much more remote, they're not going to get it. Well, another 48 hours passed, and they figured it out again. This time it was in Liverpool, on top of a building. And again, people were dispatched. And in an incident of rather dangerous parkour type exploits, a couple guys got up there. They couldn't actually remove the flag because it was bolted to the pole, but the people who owned the building told Shia LaBeouf, you have to remove this, we can't have people climbing up there. It's really dangerous and we don't want to be liable for 4chan people falling off our roof. Now, and then the whole world was really anticipating. It was the most fun anyone had had with Shia LaBeouf. In years. And they were all hoping, oh, where's he going to put it next? Maybe he'll like sink it to the bottom of the ocean and set up a camera there, and we'll have to figure out a way to get down there with a submarine. But Shia LaBeouf, being the twit that he is, bailed on the whole idea. But
what a fun game, though, that he wasn't a part of.
It was wonderful. It was, if he only realized, no, this is actually good for your career. This is the performance art you wanted to be doing. You've engaged your audience.
A very committed audience. A pathologically committed audience of 4chan members.
So he'll never do anything that good again.
He's peaked.
No, that's
it really was the peak of his career.
Well, just as we go out, I want to mention a few people who had scandals so big, by all rights, we should have never heard from them again, and yet all of these people have happy, healthy, thriving Hollywood careers. It's astonishing to me how well they're doing. Every one of these, they are all men, every one of these men has become richer and richer and richer by the way the public has embraced them after their massive scandals. So I'm speaking of Rob Lowe, Mickey Rourke, Pee Wee Herman, Hugh Grant, Charlie Sheen, and the king of them all, Robert Downey Jr. No one has ever had a bigger, I don't think anyone in Hollywood history has ever had a bigger career comeback than Robert Downey Jr. Yeah. He was so written off. he was so put to the side, told to go away and never return, that he was almost doing what Harrison Ford was doing prior to Star Wars, essentially helping people rehearse for things. That's essentially where Robert Downey Jr. was at. He was hanging around movie sets, helping people read lines for things, when he got the part in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which he really wasn't so much up for, as was just sort of friends with the general people in it and was sort of hanging around, helping them work on the movie a little bit. And finally, they decided to gamble on what was a fairly inexpensive movie and give him a shot at a lead in it. And the movie did not do well because at the time his name wasn't anything, and neither was Val Kilmer's. But anybody who goes back and watches that movie now will see that it is the movie that got him everything he's had since. It reignited the public's interest in him. It gave
I love that movie, by the way.
Yeah, it gave Hollywood confidence that he was charming and he could hold something as insane as giving him basically Marvel's entire fate rested on him.
We'll let him play a guy in a red piece of armor.
A red and yellow piece of armor.
Yeah.
And
although they do stay far, far away from Tony Stark's comic book dependence issues.
Yes, that's true.
Maybe a little bit too close to home.
They touch on it pretty hard in the second movie.
Yeah,
there's like a fake, that he's like fake drunk in that sequence.
Yeah, true. They also don't get much into Sherlock Holmes' drug addiction in the Robert Downey Jr. movies either.
It's all under the surface.
He's too busy thinking his way through these things. Because if you think hard enough, you can fight somebody.
You can fight anyone. Anyway, we do have to get going, but as always, tune back in next week as we'll hopefully have a show then.
And a special shout out to James Gunn, who proved to everyone, even in Hollywood, there's such a thing as too many pedophilia jokes. He'll work again.
So check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and whatever else. We don't have an Instagram. I don't know why I said that. Bye.
Get one now.
What okay?
That's okay.
It's good. It's always good to talk about weaponized autism. Win us some fans.
That is a good story. That's fun.
Yeah.
More fun than sorry.
Doesn't really put him in much of a light, but you know, they're having a time of it.
Oh, all right. All good.
What's up with you today, Tess?
I've got a dinner later, but nothing before that.
What's your dinner?
Having dinner with Anna and her sister.
Oh, she's got a sister, and her sister is here.
Her sister is here for the moment.
Let's go hang out a little and drink some coffee or something.